Hi everybody, it's Farida. I figured to do a video for you guys on the Libra phone wallet since I'm making one in funky kind of colors for my daughter. So I'm going to videotape start to finish based on what I do. Not really what I'm doing at the sewing machine exactly, but I'm going to go through the steps. The easiest way to do this is to choose the small or the large based on your phone size and only print and cut out those particular pattern pieces. I would not recommend cutting out both and keeping them lying around. You might mix them up. So choose one, cut out all those pieces. Make sure you follow the instructions on the interfacing for each one. Some of them call for interfacing, some call for interfacing and stabilizer. So please make sure you read those instructions and cut out your fabric, cut out your stabilizer, cut out your interfacing, get all your pieces fused, and we will start with the sewing. I am not going to go over the fusing on the camera. I mean, it's all written down on each of the pieces. I will go through the different steps. The first thing is the side tabs. The pattern calls for us to put the side tabs together, and I have pre-done some of this in advance. And this is the template for the side tabs, and here's a finished piece, but I'm going to show you what it looks like. So when you cut out the piece, you're going to fold it in half, right sides facing. So here's the right side. You're really going to fold it in half, right sides facing with the long sides meeting, the raw edge of the long sides. You're going to stitch the two short sides, and then you're going to flip this out. So you end up with two pieces that look like this. Okay, and you top stitch around the three sides, leaving the raw edge open. Now I finished one and I left one not top stitched so I can flip it in and out for you. So I'm going to go ahead and get that top stitched and I will come back. Okay, so I have both of my side tabs done and ready. So we're going to set these aside. One thing I did skip, only because I had it prepped, was the slip pocket. And I will explain this one. Unfortunately, I did it before I got on camera. So you're going to cut your pattern piece for the slip pocket, and what you're doing is you're going to fold it in half over here. So this is actually my full pattern piece, and you fold it in half this way, wrong sides together. Okay? Now don't look at the three different pieces of fabric. These are the colors my daughter wanted, but you could do it in one piece. So you fold it over and you're going to top stitch here, and then you're going to set this aside. So actually your first step was the slip pocket. You set it aside, and then the side tabs, put those over to the side, and then we get to the zipper. The zipper, you're going to follow the instructions on size. You're going to add your tabs as in the instructions. One thing I like to do is to put two tabs over here, one on the top and one on the bottom. I stitch them and then fold them out, and usually I cut them longer than I need, and I do that on both sides, and then I trim it down to the size of the zipper that's needed for the actual project. So go ahead, get your zipper done, and you're going to put that over to the side. Then the next thing we need is to bring in the zipper pocket, and that would be this piece B2. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay this down right side up, and we're going to bring our zipper and put this right side down. So the zipper teeth are going to face the right side of the pocket fabric, and you're going to keep your opening of the zipper over on the left hand side. Now the instructions ask you to use glue. That all depends on your proficiency and how fast you do, whether you want to pin or glue. I skip some steps like that. What I do is I lay my pieces together and I clip them and then go straight to the sewing machine. So here is the pocket piece, the zipper facing down, and then you need to bring the smaller piece from your zipper pocket lining, and this is piece B3. Now this is one piece where you had to fold on the dotted line. You need the piece right now that is the shorter one. So you grab that and it's gonna go right sides together, and you're going to pin, and then you're going to sew this at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'll come back once that's done. Okay, so this piece is done. It's been pressed and top stitched, and what we're going to do now is we're going to bring in piece B1. That's this piece, and we also need the second piece from B3, which is the full piece that was cut when it was unfolded at the dotted line. And what we're doing is we're basically going to put the other side of this zipper pocket in. So what I'm going to do here is, the pattern actually calls for you to do it this way, where you have this finished piece right side up, put this piece right side down, and then flip. What I do is basically just put this down, right side up, lay my finished panel right on top, and then I bring in the lining piece and put that right side down, and I go ahead and clip or pin if you're more comfortable with pins. I'm going to finish clipping this off camera, but we're going to clip this. We're going to take it to the machine, and we're going to sew at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And once that's done, we are going to open this up. We're going to press it and top stitch this piece just like we did over here. Okay, so now I have my zipper pocket all set to go. I've attached the top, I've pressed it, I've top stitched it, the pocket is all set, and as per the instructions, once this piece is on, what you're going to do is you're going to stitch the bottom and you're going to baste the edges together so that your pocket is ready to go. I like to always leave the zippers open. It's just a force of habit. I've learned my lesson the hard way. Forgetting them closed sometimes, and now whether I need to berth a bag or something through that particular pocket or not, I just leave them open until my entire project is finished, and then you can just zip it closed at that point. So this is finished for now, and you can go ahead and set it aside. And what we're going to work on is the card slots. This is the pattern piece that you're going to put together. Now I tape it all together, and what I like to do is actually pretend that this is my fabric and fold everything where it needs to be folded, just so that I know what my finished piece is supposed to look like. So here are all the pockets. Okay, and then what I do is I take my pattern and I line it up with my fabric. Now I've already pre-done some of this, so my fabric strip would be just as long as the measurement asks you for it to be, and I begin, these are my pockets, what I do is I begin to fold my fabric up and down right next to my pattern. So what I would do is, my fabric is straight down, I'd fold it up to match to this line and I'd press it. Then I would bring this piece up and I would bring my panel back to meet this fold line and press it. And I would keep going so on and so forth until my fabric piece matches my panel piece. So if you look here, now I just have a different piece of fabric up here. You can do all the same color, you can mix and match, that's up to you. So if you notice mine, here are the fold lines, they all match up. Okay. Then you're going to take piece G and you're going to lay it right sides together with your panel, with your card slots, and you're going to sew a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once you do that, you're going to turn, this is the right side of your fabric now, turn this behind your panel. Now I've already done that. So you see, I've already turned it behind. And what you're going to do is line up the raw edges. I'm going to turn this around so you could see. These are raw edges for the back, for piece G, and the card slots. And you're going to just clip these. And what I like to do is sort of press with my hand so that now the seam allowance that I sewed this with is on this side, kind of pushed down. You can press it if you want. I just don't bother getting up from the sewing machine. And then I put this in and do a 1/8 top stitch. Okay. And then this is already clipped. My piece is backed to the back. And what you're going to do is basically baste around the raw edges by 1/8 inch seam. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back. Okay, so my card panel is completely finished. It's basted at a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And now we're going to move on to attaching it to the lining piece. And for that, what you need is pattern piece F1 and F2. And that's just, it's one piece, but you're going to attach the two parts. So you're going to line this up. Don't overlap your panel. Tape it together. And what you're going to do, and what I find easy, is to take my actual fabric, which is cut to this measurement, and I line it right on top. And then you need pattern piece I, which makes your tabs, which we did in the beginning of the videos. And I like to just kind of, since it's already the same measurement as the pattern piece, I bring this down just so that I can see where the lines are, so that I can line up my tab. And then I clip that in place. Then what I do is I bring it up, and let's see if I can get this in the shot. Okay, I pull it up just so I could see the lines, and I line up this tab and I clip it in place. Now the template makes it very simple, and it tells you your card pocket goes over here. So I don't need this panel anymore because I know where I'm placing everything. So I take my card pocket and I line it to raw edges to the raw edges. So this finished backing is right side together to the lining piece. So your pockets are facing up, raw edge, and raw edge. And I'm going to go ahead and clip that. And what you're going to do is you're actually now going to baste everything again. You're going to baste 1/8 for each of the tabs, up here, down here, and you're going to baste around the 3 sides over here. And I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back. Okay, so I finished my lining with my card pocket, and our next step is to take our flap lining, which is piece A2. And what you're going to do with this piece is you're going to put it right sides together on top of your card slots and have your edge, your raw edge meet. You're going to stitch at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And when you're finished, you're going to press this open. Now, you are going to have to trim your seam allowance. Now, what I like to do is, top stitching for here is optional in the pattern, but since I top stitch at 1/8, it helps with trimming the seam allowance on the back with bulk. So I do my top stitch at 1/8, and that actually gives me a guide. So when I fold this back this way, what I do is I actually take the fabric for the flap that is in the seam allowance, and since the stitching stops in there, everything that's over here for the card slot is extra. So I try to trim as close as I can to my top stitching row in the seam allowance as possible. You need to be very careful here not to actually cut your top stitching, because that's what is your guide as how far to cut in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I'm back with my entire panel top stitched. I reduced the bulk from the card panel so you can actually see the seam allowance from my lining from the flap. Okay, so now this whole piece is finished. We're going to set this aside for the moment, and what we're doing is we're going to bring in pattern piece D and pattern piece E, which we actually put together in the beginning. So we're going to lay the slip pocket back piece down, and what we're going to do is lay our slip pocket right on top, meeting the raw edges on the sides and on the bottom. Now we're going to clip or pin this, and the pattern actually calls for you to find the center of your entire panel here and sew a line down the middle of your slip pocket so that it becomes 2. Personally, I don't see what I would use or what my daughter would use those 2 for this moment, since this is actually for her. I do think if I leave this open, we can maybe put in receipts or something longer in here, or even longer dollar bills, whatever it is. So for the purposes of this one, I'm not going to stitch down the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and basically baste around this edge, and once I do that, I will be back. Okay, so I've basted my slip pocket onto this lining piece around the 3 edges, and it's ready to go. So I'm going to set this aside for a moment, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring in our zipper pocket and your pattern piece A1, which is the exterior flap. And we are going to, I've already done this, but we're going to line it up to the top of the zipper pocket, right sides together, and you're going to stitch at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. When you're done, you're going to press this back, and you're going to top stitch here. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to bring in pattern piece C, which is this one, and you're going to attach it to the bottom of your zipper pocket. So we're going to attach this here. We're going to clip, and we're going to sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. When that's done, we're going to turn this over. We're going to press it, and you can top stitch that seam at 1/8 also. Now I'm going to finish this up, and I'll be back with that finished piece. Okay, so I've attached my piece C to the bottom, and I decided not to top stitch here because this will be the bottom of the wallet. So if you look at it this way, that seam is at the bottom, and I don't mind if there's no top stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to turn your panel right side up, and you're going to bring in that slip pocket that we finished where it asks you to actually sew it in half to make 2 pockets, but I decided to leave it open. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this entire slip pocket, you're going to turn it where the opening is up towards the flap and put it right sides down on the bottom portion of your wallet and get your raw edges to meet. What you're going to do is you're going to clip or pin, and you're going to sew at a 3/8 inch seam allowance over here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and then come back. Okay, so I have both of my panels finished, and I actually already clipped this, but I wanted to show you, let's see, let's unclip this portion. So this side is the full panel that has the slip pocket plus the zipper pocket. So you'll see the zipper pocket is here. Originally we basted this to the entire panel, but I'm going to make a small change and I'll explain that in a second. So you have the entire inside panel, the outside panel with the zipper pocket side on it, and then you have the inside panel over here. This is the one that has the tabs on the sides. So you're going to clip the entire thing together. What I suggest is, and the pattern also suggests, to trim if there's excess, but start by lining up on the flaps and work your way down. If one flap is a tad longer than the other on this end, you could just trim whichever is longer and just clip everything. And the reason I am clipping everything is because I'm going to make a change. On the pattern on page 19, it says to leave about a 5-inch gap here to flip the wallet inside out. Now, what I did was, because I want a clean look where I don't have to hand stitch anything after I flip, I'm going to turn this over, and the zipper pocket that we had basted to the entire panel when we finished that piece, I took out the basting on the sides over here and over here, and I opened the bottom. So now if you look, my actual lining for the inside of the zipper pocket is completely undone. What I'm going to go do right now is I'm actually going to just stitch the lining pieces for the pocket together on this side and this side, but I'm not going to baste them to the panel. Now that's going to help me for when I flip this. I'm actually going to flip it from the pocket itself. So I'm going to only stitch these two pieces together on the side and on this side. So then it'll be closed here and here, and it'll be loose by itself, not attached to the main panel, and it'll be open from here. Once I finish that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this in like this, and I'm going to bring this in this way, just to keep the bottom portion of my pocket away from the stitching that I'm going to do around the entire wallet. Because remember, to close this off, we need a 3/8 inch seam allowance, leaving the 5-inch gap here. But because I'm going to flip through the pocket, I'm not leaving a gap. You're going to go all the way around with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, so you don't have to worry about leaving a gap. So again, you're going to close this and you're going to close this, but leave the bottom open and leave the pocket loose from the main panel. So once you stitch the sides and you leave the bottom open, what I suggest is you bring in the corner and you pin it. You bring in this corner and you pin it. That just keeps them away from the stitching. So you do that, then you do 3/8 inch seam allowance, and we'll come back and finish from there. Okay, so I've stitched around the inside, and remember I had mentioned to keep the pocket bottom piece open. So I flipped this inside out. just to make, right side out actually, just to make sure everything looks good, my corners are fine, any excess seam allowance on the inside could have been trimmed if you needed it. The change I made actually from the pattern, since this is for my daughter, I did not want to give her a more expensive, a tongue lock, like the one that's in the sample of the pattern. So I decided to put in a snap for her. Your closure is your choice. You could put a snap like this, you could put a magnetic snap, you could follow the tongue lock in there. The closure is totally up to you. So I went ahead and did this. Once that's finished, what you're going to do is you're going to open your entire piece and you're going to bring these side tabs down. And what I did was I went ahead and used my edge foot and I did a small 1/8 inch top stitch on each of these sides. But this is loose, so you're going to do the edge stitch right on the actual edge of the entire wallet. Once that's finished, what I'm going to do right now is flip this over to the outside part. And when I say outside, it's where the zipper is on the outside. And I'm going to fold this panel with the side tabs backwards. Now it feels awkward, but that's okay. What you're going to do is you're going to line up the edges of the tabs and you're going to pin those. I'm going to use a couple of clips. Pin these on both ends. Edge stitch with I use my edge foot for an 1/8 inch edge or seam allowance, and once you stitch both of these tabs, what you're actually going to do is you're going to flip this inwards, and I'm just going to do this, so just bear with me. So what you'll end up with is something that looks like this, where it's sticking out to the outside. And you're going to trim the threads. Make sure that you backstitch both when you start and end on either of these sides. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. And once that's finished, I'll come back and flip it on camera. And while you're at it, remember the zipper, I had said leave the pocket open. Well, we're at the point where the entire wallet is finished, so we can pull the pocket out. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold this in and create a 1/4 inch seam. And I just top stitch the whole thing. So I'll just fold in at the side seam about a 1/4 inch. Okay. And what you'll do is pin this and do the same thing all the way across. And I'm going to fix this in a minute, but you'll get the idea. So you're going to do the 1/4 inch all the way across and then stitch it, and we'll tuck that back in once I get back on camera. Okay, so I'm back with everything all stitched. So you'll see my tabs are stitched on either end, and my pocket is stitched, actually top stitched. So this piece is finished. All we do is tuck that pocket in. Just make sure you push your points in as best you can. Remember, this is a seam that's on the inside of the zipper. No one will see that. Close the pocket out and then flip this. Okay, now you don't need to push these corners out because that's for the inside. So what you're doing is actually sort of leaving a pleat. So you leave those corners tucked in. So see this? It looks weird, but that's okay because we need it to stay tucked in. And there it is. Now remember, mine is just something for my daughter, nothing major. This would look so pretty in cork or faux leather, or even just a really nice cotton fabric. Just roll it up, and then you bring your closure, and there we go. So there's the full Libra. Okay, I think it would be gorgeous in some cork. Again, this is for a child, so it's a playful thing. Alright, well, hope you enjoyed the tutorial, or how at least I put the Libra together, and I hope it helps you guys out. Thanks.